As I've said before, Miss Gray was my first grade teacher. Then came Miss O'Connor, Miss Howell, and Mrs. Kendall. As I remember, that was it. One day, when only in the first grade, and I knew very little English, foolishly, while playing with the pussies from a pussy willow branch, I put one in my nostril. I must have been seen by Miss Gray. I couldn't blow it out. Miss Gray noticed my discomfort and kept me after school, continually making me blow my nose until we got that little pussy out. How I cried, but she would not let me go home until that condition was settled. You know, I could have gotten a bad infection from that foreign object in my nose, and she knew that I would probably not tell my mother about what I had done. I loved reading, memorizing the little reading books and poems by heart. Summers were very lonesome for me. I had no books to read, and my parents were not acquainted with the location of the library, although we had one at the Salem Center. It wasn't a building as such. It was a library room and part of the town clerk's house. During the school year, the supervisor of schools delivered to our school on a regular basis of every 5 or 6 weeks a box of reading books, and then taking back the ones he had brought us, say 6 weeks prior to that time. During the summer, there was no access to books, and it was almost impossible to get away from the farm to get them from the library room. Furthermore, my parents didn't even know that they could do it. I'm sure they would have done it had they known. Education was so advanced, or rather is so advanced now, with so much more need for reading. Miss Gray let me have a few old books to take home for the summer vacation, but I wanted more. My mother always said, "This little one must go on to higher education. Her nose is always in books." I used to help my brothers with their schoolwork sometimes. My father was not as much a believer in education as my mother was, especially for girls. He thought girls didn't need it because they would get married and have children and so on. No one in school considered himself richer than the other, except the foreigners were looked down on and often called names because of the food they ate or their language. These were, of course, the Polish, often called pierogi eaters or golumpkis, stuffed cabbage. But I must say the American Yankees loved these foods, especially the homemade rye bread and kielbasa. But that didn't stop them from poking fun at us. One thing all the girls had in common was a display of huge ribbon bows in their hair, colors matching their dresses. We all wore dresses. No girls ever wore slacks then. I wish we had, because we would have felt warmer in winter. Most of us wore felt boots up to the knees during the deep snows. One of the families, American of course, dressed the girls in long arctics. Even one Polish one did. I was always jealous of them for that. I loved the Arctics, not the boots. The Arctics buckled, and I liked that. They were fancy, long buckles. I remember one of the girls making fun of my boots. She had Arctics. Well, I didn't like that, making fun of me. So I just whammed her good and threw her in the snow. I was punished by the teacher. I had to stay after school or some such punishment, yet I wouldn't tell her why I hit the girl. I was probably 8 or 9 years old. At that time, almost every child had boots like mine, the ones I hated so. This was a 2-part boot. A heavy felt boot was put on your foot at first. Then there was a shorter rubber shoe-type boot that went on over the felt boot, and that went like just a little beyond the ankle. And these boots were heavy and cumbersome, but they kept us warm, especially walking to school through the deep snows. Sometimes our father drove us to school in a heavy wooden sledge drawn by horses, but that was very seldom. As I remember, we just had to trudge through the snow, hence those boots. There were no plows going through to make paths for us through the roads. The neighbors helped themselves. However, I believe there always were selectmen in the town to help situations of different types and sort of to run the government of the town. Eventually, they saw to it that the main roads were cleared. At that time, most of the roads were dirt roads. After all, this governing body in town had to look after problems of the town. It was quite an honor to be voted in as a select man or tax collector, probate judge, or whatever, town clerk. Concerning the going to and coming home from school, there were many kid-type quarrels and fights, stone-throwing, wrestling, calling of names, and even accusations which may or may not have been true. An example would be, "You took mail out of our mailbox." Now, something may have been missing sometime or another. I don't know. The mailboxes were located in groups most convenient for the mail carrier, not near houses as they are now. People had to go distances to pick up their mail from their mailbox. Many times, and often, people ordered items from mail order houses such as Sears and Roebuck, Montgomery Ward, Williams, and so forth. Most of the time, the mailman left the package near or on the mailbox if it couldn't fit inside. But if it was insured, he delivered it to the house. If it was very large or heavy, we had to go to get it from the freight office or in Colchester from the post office. When I was small, the mailman or the mail carrier drove a horse and carriage delivering his mail. Later on, he had a car. I remember once my mother ordered a pretty hat through the catalog. She loved hats, and she had some pretty ones. But this hat never arrived. She never received it. Although the company that she ordered it from said that it was mailed and delivered. Someone had taken it from near the box. That made hard feelings, also because accusations were made. She said that she saw it on one of the neighbors' heads. The good old days were not always good, and they had much to be desired. However, the children had so many chores to do, they dared not dally too much along the road. Work was waiting for them at home. Now, this didn't mean that just we had that work to do. All the children did. Now, the girl I threw into the snow was Julia Ditko, who later went to the same college as I did and was in the same class. She taught in Manchester, Connecticut, and I in Hebron and Salem. I went to Norwich High School, that was NFA. She went to New Haven. But I received a 2-year scholarship to college. She didn't. The only drawback to my scholarship was one written in small print, which I didn't realize when I took the scholarship. And this small print said that upon graduation, I had to teach in a rural school for 2 years before going to teach or before accepting a position in the city. This was to guarantee the rural areas of having good, well-trained teachers.